Oh, hello, everybody. Welcome to the official Do Good Better podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Kirby. This show, of course, featuring small nonprofits doing great big things. And I think you're going to enjoy today's show because we've got an individual on here and we have a mission and we have an organization that is doing incredibly big things. And I think you're going to have an absolute blast. So I would like to welcome to the show not only a licensed mental health therapist, she's a veteran, and she's the founder and CEO of the iamenoughh Foundation. Hey, it's Megan Fenyoe. How are you today?
Hey, Patrick. I'm fantastic. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
I'm very excited to have you on the show. I was just telling you before we launched here that mental health, mental wellness is sort of like a big issue we're talking about here in flyover country, North Dakota. But it seems to be popping up as a let's get this stigma erased out of the gate sort of thing. And you're on the front lines of all of that. So I'm very intrigued to hear your backstory. So for those of you who are just tuning in and for those of you who are just listening or watching, Megan, tell us a little bit about the iamenoughh Foundation. How did it start? And tell us the backstory. Let's start at the beginning and how did we get there?
All right. So I have been a mental health therapist for 15 years. And when I was 33 years old, so 2012, I commissioned as an officer in the Air Force and provided mental health treatment to active duty members. And I did not expect to meet a husband, but lo and behold, I did. And, I've always struggled growing up with the I'm not good enough mindset. I have a learning disability, 8th grade reading and math level and all of this stuff. And so that mindset of I'm not good enough really started when I was younger, but I really did not notice it, like where it was like affecting every part of my life until I met my now ex-husband, which is kind of funny. But long story short, it was a very quick marriage. So we were met, dated, and married within 11 months. And right after the marriage, after the wedding, things really started to change. And he ended up having an affair for 14 months of our 2.5-year marriage. And the lies and the controlling behavior of himself, I literally began to think that I was crazy, that I was insane, that I had done something wrong. Even though I had been a mental health therapist at this point for 10 years, I was still saying, oh my gosh, like I'm the one that's wrong. And it wasn't until years later did I realize that I was in a very narcissistic, abusive marriage. Our divorce was final in 2016. He had pulled our divorce papers 4 times, just playing with my mind. But I was so traumatized that I stayed faithful and committed to him for 2 years after that. And the love bombing, like we call about in narcissistic abuse, and the gaslighting actually got worse. And at this point I had nothing. Like I had fallen apart. I had this mask on, acting like I had it all together. And instead of actually getting the help I needed, I just started working a ton of hours and just basically like killing myself, basically. So in February of 2018, which is going to be about 2 years in a couple of weeks, he had messaged me. I had moved down to San Diego from Northern California, and we were still talking. So for 2 years, we were dating. And he said he had a job interview. He was going to come down, and we were going to start over. So I just remember saying, okay, Lord, if like this isn't meant to be, you need to take him out of my life, because the affair and the divorce wasn't enough for me to leave. And literally 24 hours later, I had found out that he had moved in another girl a month before our divorce was final, and she had been living in our home for 2 years. I never returned to our home after the affair, but he was with both of us, and neither one of us knew the other existed. And literally that day, February 15th of 2018, I walked away from him, and also had lost my 6-figure income 4 months before that. Had just moved to San Diego. So I'm sitting here with my heart and absolutely nothing. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I literally am not good enough. I am so not enough. I've been a therapist for 15 years, lose this income, lose the man of my dreams. There's nothing left. And that's when I really started doing the work. I got into my own mental health therapy and started doing my trauma work. And then I started writing my book. I didn't know that my book was going to turn out the way it has. But I wrote that book in the most traumatic 5 months of my life. And then it's called You Are Enough. And it launched in August of 2018, and it's been a huge success. So then I teach a lot about visual coping skills with my patients, my clients. So it's really about reality testing our thoughts and restructuring them. And so when I was going through my trauma work, I'm a huge affirmations, visual coping skills person. I had, all of these things all over my house to help me get out of bed every morning, to just be able to put one foot in front of the other. And so that message that I had learned was, my ex-husband never told me I wasn't good enough. I created that thought in my head based on his actions and his behaviors. And so many of us have struggled. I mean, I swear every single one of us have struggled with the I'm not good enough mindset, whether it be in your health, relationship, career, what have you. And staying stuck in that mindset keeps us from living a passionate and purposeful life. So I was sitting at a conference last January, and I was like, okay, what can I do? I'm like, I got to do something else. I got to give back, because everyone was so amazing when the book came out. So I created these visual coping cards. I think you've seen them, but I'll just show them for everyone. So here's the visual coping card. It says, I am enough. And on the back, it has the word because with 3 lines. And so what this means is, like, you write why you believe that you're enough. And so for me, starting out, I had to write, I am enough because I got out of bed this morning, right? Because I had to start small, like super small, and build from there. So I had no idea what was going to happen with this movement. Let me tell you, it's like a one-man show. So I just started posting these cards on social media and handing them out to people at events and all over San Diego. And in 11 months, so people can actually go to the website and order 5 cards for free. And in 11 months, I have mailed out, it's me, I write the envelopes, everything. It's like a one-man show. Over 5,000 cards to 44 states and 16 countries.
That's awesome.
So yeah, and it'll be a year and 2 weeks that it's been going on. And so then someone had mentioned, like, Megan, you really gotta make this into a nonprofit. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm clueless about what that means. I am not a business person. And so I just said, okay, why not? Like, let's jump and let's do it. And so the movement became a 501c3 in November of 2019.
Outstanding.
That's the story.
Yeah, little young organization. And I think it's really funny. I think a lot of people who are working in the nonprofit industry, especially fundraisers and especially people who are working in the executive team, would find this story relatable to bosses who don't understand, who are demanding inappropriately unexpected or overly enthusiastic sort of expectations that you're never going to achieve, and yet they're always sort of held to a standard that they're never going to have in the first place. And I think they're going to say, I'm enough today that I made 5 phone calls, or I'm enough today because I made 1 meeting happen. And I think we talk a lot about that, how fitting it is you're a nonprofit, because what you're talking about is very nonprofit centric, to actually kind of have that self doubt all the time of, I'm not fundraising enough and I'm not doing enough for our organization too. So I love that as a connection.
And I'm struggling with that right now. I'm just going to tell you.
Welcome to the nonprofit club. You're official now.
It's funny because people, know me, like social media and people in California and that kind of stuff know me as the I Am Enough girl, right?
Sure.
And I'm very authentic and real. And I say, you know what? I struggle with this all the time. That is why I have these cards, because ever since I launched the nonprofit, I'm like clueless. And I'm like, am I good enough to do this? Am I doing enough in this nonprofit? So I'm so glad that you had said that, because I completely resonate with that.
It is 100% relatable, I think, to everybody in the nonprofit industry. And speaking of the nonprofit industry, I know you're very young and just started in November, but you probably have some big, hairy, audacious goals that you're planning, because you seem like a person that's really never satisfied with just status quo, and I'm just going to kind of fit there. So what are your big dreams, some of your things that you're planning on in the future for the I Am Enough movement?
Well, definitely continuing to offer the cards for free, and really want to start doing some outreach activities. And I would love to do events throughout the country focused on women, I mean, men and women, but also like kids. So like having two different types of events going on at the same time, because I actually get a ton of teachers and parents that order the cards for kids.
Yeah.
Because I think it's super important. And so really events, I love doing events, and that is, my big vision. Continuing, I do like open photo shoots with the cards, for free. And so definitely events, and then also being able to give back to domestic violence shelters as well as veteran organizations. So yeah, I want to travel everywhere and carry this movement and just impact and empower people to believe that they're enough. Like wherever it takes me, I'm totally open to that.
You swing through the Midwest. We'll get you into a conference or two full of nonprofiteers.
Well, I'm from Michigan, I'm a Midwesterner. I'm from Michigan.
We're half a dozen states over. It's we're the same thing. Our winters are worse, but it's fine. It's
right.
Fine.
It's fine.
I love that. And, a lot of people have the idea to start a nonprofit. Very few people do. And so I think that's interesting to the point of like, what makes your nonprofit stand out differently than everybody else? What do you do differently that said, light bulb moment, I'm going to make this a nonprofit differently than anyone else has ever done before?
Oh, that's a hard question, because this is like me, like I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but I think the fact that like I have been a therapist for 15 years, I have been in an abusive marriage, and I created these just to kind of give back. And I think that the way that it took off, I mean, all of these cards have been created out of my own pocket and just a one-man show. So I think it's different because it grew so organically and fast. And I don't know of other nonprofits that have grown that fast.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that sets it apart. Plus, it's a nonprofit that literally can touch every single person. It doesn't matter your age, your gender, whatever it is. Every single one of us have struggled with this. So I think it's made it a little hard in regards to our target market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I say our, but it's literally just me. I don't have a team yet, but I also don't want to hone in on a target market, because it does affect everyone. And so that is the big vision is, getting a team that can put on events for the nonprofit, that maybe it's an all men event. So I have a man that does the event, or all women, or domestic violence, or kids, or whatever. So that's why I think it's a little different than other ones.
It's funny that you got really nichey. It is like, hey, you just need to believe that you're enough to do X, Y, and Z. And ironically, as nichey as you got, has how global impact, or sort of like everybody can understand that, regardless of whatever industry you're in. The idea of like the imposter syndrome, I'm not really good enough, whether it's, again, for a boss or a relationship. And I think you hit on a number of those plateaus. And I think there's an authenticity to it to say, I'm not going to do and start a nonprofit because I want to start a nonprofit. You're starting it because it's the best avenue to get your message out to as many people as possible. And I think that's what makes you extraordinarily unique. And I think that's really one of the cooler things about the entire I Am Enough movement you've pieced together.
Thank you for that, because, and I guess, thank you for reminding me of that, because that's where I was at. I was at a stuck point, like a couple months ago. And I'm like, okay, what else can I do here to get this message out? Because I didn't have the money to do advertisements or hire a social media person or a PR person. And, that's one of the reasons, because I got stuck.
Yep.
Because I was like, resource wise, I've all tapped out, and the vision for this movement was so much bigger. And so, yeah, I had to kind of take the leap and know that it's all going to turn out good in the end.
Yep.
But I wasn't willing to give this up and let it be status quo, because it has blown up in like the last year. So, yeah.
Hey, you're enough. to lead a nonprofit. I believe that very much so. So what sort of the documented successes, and I know you mentioned a couple off of the top of the interview, but what sort of documented pieces of success you've had over the last couple of months as you sort of have ramped up some of the things you've done for the I Am Enough movement?
Well, I was in the running for beneficiary for one of the biggest events in Southern California that's happening this weekend, the City Summit and Gala.
Yeah.
And I got runner-up. So I was super proud of myself for that. And so on top of being a nonprofit, I get to, I get a lot of freebies this weekend of a booth and time on stage and, all of that stuff. And then I got a couple donations, which has been awesome. I got one from Walmart.
Yeah.
It was like $500.
Yeah.
And so just like the little wins, like people here, like donating $25, donating $20, and just like the encouragement, that has been my biggest win, is like the support and the encouragement of people that are saying, you need to do this. More people need to hear this. What can I do to help?
Yep.
So super excited about that. But yeah, I have to remind myself of the little wins, because sometimes it's just overwhelming where I'm like, okay, now what? Like right now I like focus on raising money. So but the little wins, they're good.
It's an excellent transition because we don't celebrate enough wins in nonprofit worlds anyway, because we think it's bragging or we don't think it's enough anyway. So kudos to you for not only raising money and doing it and celebrating those small donations that will eventually turn into larger ones as this sort of thing progresses. And you can't expect to come out of the gate raising millions, because that doesn't happen. So kudos to you. And again, let's remind everybody, it's been like 2.5 months since you started this thing. So you're in this sort of infancy where I think a lot of organizations are trying to find themselves, and you've already sort of hit the ground running and gone. So you're in a really interesting position that doesn't necessarily happen to a lot of organizations. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Part of the show here is where we really like to celebrate other people and sort of appreciate those who have helped us get to where we go. A time for shout outs galore, because then, you get to share the love with all of your friends when this podcast goes live and say, hey, you mean a lot to us. Is there an individual or the businesses that you are sort of appreciative of being a part of, sort of your journey?
Oh my gosh.
The organization?
So definitely my first shout out goes to Michelle Madich and Ryan Long from City Summit and Gala. I actually launched the I Am Enough movement at City Summit Gala last year.
Awesome.
In February. And I've only been in this world, the speaker world, all of this stuff for 2 years. And they have been pivotal in just getting me on stages and supporting me. And it was actually Michelle that encouraged me to start the nonprofit. So I owe them so much. They're amazing. They've always been supportive of the movement. I have a gentleman who has kind of taken me under his wing. His name is Roger Ware. And he is kind of it right now for the board. And he's just got a ton of knowledge in the nonprofit sector. And so he is kind of telling me, kind of showing me what to do, the ins and outs. And so I'm so thankful for him. And then I've got some people, we're having a call next week actually, that are interested in learning more about the movement and, getting involved. And so all of those people, I mean, I can't name everyone, but all of those people and people that have ordered the cards, just all of the support. I mean, it's just been amazing. So thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, that's beyond fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank you for being on the show. So what I'd love to do is help with any particular fundraising advice that you might need. That's kind of our bit, our little love note and thank you note for being a guest. So is there a fundraising question in general that I can help out
Patrick,
I Am Enough movement? Yes.
That's a loaded question.
Sure is.
Because we talked about this before we got on the show. Because I'm like, board members and fundraising. I think, it's so anything, because I'm brand new. I'm a baby. So I'm going to leave that open to you. Like anything that you feel would be helpful to me and to your listeners and those watching, I'm leaving it to you, because I have 1,000 questions, but.
Well, I'll give you what you're doing incredibly right, and then the next step that I think you can probably do. Number one, you need to tell your story to as many people as possible, and what you're doing there is right. So every time you get on stage to talk about why this is important, that is wonderful. You're going to want to tweak it to get to a particular call to action. So once you've got them in the palm of your hands and they say, I don't know what I can do to help, they're going to ask that question eventually, right? They're going to have say, well, how can I help you? And you're going to default to saying, we should get some cards and send it to somebody, or introduce me to somebody else. What I would create is a small tiered $25 or $50 or $100 would provide this to those we're trying to help. It will provide us the ability to make a couple of these baskets that we're going to give to individuals who may need it, how we're going to get into the schools and help kids. We're going to, like, those little ranking items will allow somebody to feel like they gave something and tangibly provided you with resources to go out and continue what you're doing. So those low level gifts, I think, will be really intriguing for someone who's just kind of starting out. The other thing is, when you are putting on those events, look to individuals who can sort of sponsor and underwrite a lot of the costs that you don't want to pay for. So if people who would pay for, the tables and chairs and the food and that kind of stuff. So when you're doing those events, you don't have to worry about it, and it's all gravy from anything raised night of. So those people that you'll want to make some friends with, and that you will find through telling your story to as many people as possible. So keep up the excellent work there. But in your spare time, because you probably have so much of it, kind of carve out as much as you can to kind of get incremental pieces to your fundraising puzzle in ways that people can say, if I gave you $20, what is that going to do?
Awesome. I love that.
I think you're going to be well on your way. I like it.
Thank you.
And speaking of well on our way, we are already on the well of our way to the end of the show, which is so quick, and it's terrible. We could talk for 4 hours, but alas, the internet will not allow it. So the floor is yours, though. I want to make sure that everybody who is watching and listening and saying that I know somebody, a group or a school, a group of individuals or kids or adults, or even somebody in my office who clearly needs to hear this kind of message. If they are looking to help and get connected, how do they do so, and what do they need, and how can they help your organization be amazingly awesome? How can they help the I Am Enough movement and you?
Thank you so much. There's many ways to get in touch with me. You can go to the website, the movement website, iamenoughmovement.info. You can reach out to me there. You can order your cards. Megan Fenyoe, everything on social media is Megan Fenyoe. There's just so many ways right now. This is what I'm excited about. Is I keep talking about this call, but because it's a baby and it's growing. And so people that are interested in wanting to get involved in something and grow with it, and maybe find a different talent, like maybe you want to learn social media. Okay, great. Like, let's learn together, right? So that's the exciting part, and that's what we're looking for. So definitely social media, Megan Fenyoe, iamenoughmovement.info. I am going to give a plug real quick for I Am Enough TV. So I Am Enough TV just launched 2 weeks ago on Roku and Amazon Fire TV and Google Play and Apple TV. So it's really cool. You just have to go to those channels and search Easy Way TV, and you'll see the I Am Enough TV show. So I'm super excited about that.
I love it. And as always, all that information is going to be in the show notes. We'll link everything there so you can kind of find it. And of course, a link to where you can donate your giant sacks of money because you've been impressed with the I Am Enough movement and everything that Megan's saying. Thank you so much for being on the show. This, again, the Do Good Better podcast, helping these small nonprofits who are doing amazingly big things. And I bet there's a lot of people shaking their heads saying that this is some great big things that you have brewing. So I appreciate you being on the show. Thank you so much. And I hope everyone enjoyed this one. I certainly did, because that's awesome. So outstanding. Thank you so much for being a guest. And thank you for swinging by the official Do Good Better podcast. See you next time.